about the similarities between the Mexicans and the Irish, just, besides the whole fornication and the whole, boozeness and all the drunkenness and all that stuff. Italians are another one. You think of ethnic Catholics, what do we think? We think big families, we think loud, we think drunk, we think just very colorful, vibrant culture. So I would say Mexicans, if I had to pick amongst ethnic Catholics, I'd say Irish, but you could really compare us to Italians, to Poles. Poles are another big group. When I was over in Chicago, it was interesting. I had an interview at WGN, and the janitors there, they were all young people in their 20s. They were all Poles. Not a single one of them was speaking English. And these were people in their 20s. If I saw them, I think, oh, it's just some white person just being a janitor. No, they were absolute Poles. And then when I was talking to my host in Chicago, they said, you need to know two things here in Chicago, or, you need to say, hablas español, and then the other thing they said was, however you say, do you speak Polish, and, Polish, Polski, or something like that. He said, you need to know those two phrases to be able to function in Chicago.
So, but those guys are immigrants, though.
Yeah, exactly. Those guys are immigrants. All these groups are immigrants, Irish, or they've always been viewed as immigrants in this country, and for the longest time, a lot of people didn't think of Irish as American, Italians as American. My ultimate conspiracy theory, it's really this whole divide between Mexicans and Americans. It actually goes back all the way to Spain, to the rivalries between Elizabeth and England and Imperial Spain. You had, English, Hispanic, Catholic, Protestant, and they were fighting over who was going to be able to control the New World. That's the big ultimate Reconquista conspiracy that I have, but I don't really buy it.
Oh, you don't, but you...
It's interesting, though. It's interesting because if you think of the great maligned immigrant groups in this country, the Irish were bashed on forever. The Italians were bashed on for a long time. The Poles, they were bashed on for a while as well. Ukrainians, I would say not as much, just because there was big Ukrainian migration, but not as much as the other groups. And now we have Mexicans. What's the common theme? Catholicism.
And not, and immigration as an issue within, talking about the Mexican community. I mean, there's so many different layers. There are the pobladores, right, who've been here for some period of time.
And the Californios.
Yeah, I mean, so you're talking about a very class stratified community. You're talking about a community where people have very different relationships to American and American citizenship. Is it even fair to be calling all those people, or writing about that entire group as Mexicans?
I can see those divisions. A lot of Americans can't. There's a question in the book. Guy wrote in, my family came to Texas in the 1700s before it was even the United States. We were under the Mexican flag for maybe 30-some years. We were under the American flag for a longer time, and we were under the Spanish flag for even longer time, the American flag. I'm 10th or 11th generation, whatever. My last name's Gonzalez. I have dark skin, but my family hasn't spoken Spanish for 3 or 4 generations. So why is it that when I walk down the street, people call me a dirty Mexican? I think in the United States, a lot of people don't make those classifications. The only people that make the classifications would be the people who are there, the people who are the Californios or the 4th generation Chicanos, or, all those people. A lot of Americans, I would argue, you see a last name Gonzalez, oh, they had to have crossed the border, just a couple of years ago or something like that. I really think Hispanic surnames or Hispanic named people still Americans haven't fully assimilated them into the American, body politic, or whatever you want to call it. We think of names, Italian last names, Irish last names. We don't think of them, oh yeah, Italian. We don't really give it a second thought. We say, yeah, these are American last names. Gonzalez, Hernandez, Arellano, mine for that matter. You still think of that as a Hispanic, therefore can't possibly be American surname. And that's the tragedy, is that there is so much diversity. Even I mean, I'm not even talking about Latinos. Let's just talk about Mexicans. You do have those Californios, the pobladores here in Los Angeles. You have people who are from Mexico, and they don't like the other Mexicans because they were discriminated against. I'm talking specifically about Oaxacans. Oaxacans, there's a huge community of Oaxacans around Koreatown here in Los Angeles. In Mexico, they were just spat upon as being dirty immigrants. Here in Southern California, they've been able to make something of themselves, but not because they associated with other Mexicans. They just became even more insular, but to the average American, they're just going to say, oh, that's just somebody from Mexico.
So people, Mexicans who might be divided, like the Oaxacans versus other people, generationally, historically, that people they're cool with that. They don't mind being a Mexican, for the purpose of your analysis.
I don't think so. I mean, I don't get, let's put it this way, I don't get that many complaints from saying, well, why aren't, I don't fall under that group. The purpose of the column is really to answer questions that people have about Mexicans. And, what is a Mexican? Well, I really think that's a tough thing to say, because you have children here born in Southern California, like myself, who were raised by Mexican parents who say, hey, you're not Chicano, you're not Mexican American, you are Mexican. If you go to most high schools right now in Southern California, where there's a majority Latino, I would argue the majority of them would say they're a particular national group of national origin. So you'd have one kid, oh, I'm Mexican, oh, I'm Salvadoran, or I'm this and that. And because you do have so many Mexicans, a lot of them would say, I'm from this state. So in my case, I would say, I'm Zacatecano, I'm from the state of Zacatecas. Even though I wasn't born in Zacatecas, you just have that tie to the region of where you're from.
Interesting. All right, this will be my last question. Are we really talking about race here, or, just because I worked on a show that was very much about race for a long time, is this a racial question, or we're talking about something else when we talk about Mexicans?
Mexicans aren't a race. I'm somewhat light-skinned. My mom, she's whiter than you, and she's Mexican. My dad, he's super, super dark. Traditionally, we've treated race as just based on your skin color. Mexicans are all different types of races. I think, there's been that argument made that in the United States, Mexicans have been treated like another race, and in some ways, a lot of the rhetoric that you hear, it is in sort of that racialized rhetoric, that racialized. Or even discrimination. We were talking earlier about Mendez versus Westminster. The civil rights movement in the United States really started in Orange County when a group of Latino parents, they're actually war veterans, the dads, they come back and they found out that their kids couldn't go to the white school in the city of Westminster. They had to go to the Mexican school. So they fought against that. They sued they sued actually 4 school districts: Westminster, El Modena, Orange, and Garden Grove. I think I'm losing my train of thought at that point. But they sued, and they actually won the victory. They won it so that Orange County schools had to desegregate. The following year, Governor Earl Warren, he signs a state law mandating that schools can no longer be segregated according to racial lines. So Mexicans were being treated as a racial group, even though they're not really a race. And
significant, because Earl Warren went to the Supreme Court and heard Brown v. Board, which adopted the same logic.
And not only that, Thurgood Marshall, he actually filed an amicus curiae, or curiae, or however you pronounce it. Excuse my bad English here. A
friendly brief.
Yeah, exactly. A friendly brief on behalf of Mendez versus Westminster for the NAACP. When he argued the case versus in the Supreme Court, he also cited Mendez versus Westminster. So this is really one of the pillars of the civil rights movement in the United States. Happened in Orange County and happened with Mexicans. Discrimination against Mexicans.
Okay, so.